The elevator doors opened with a soft ding and there he was. Brandon, my husband of 5 years, walking hand in hand with a woman I'd never seen before. They were laughing, completely lost in each other, completely unaware that I was sitting in the leather chair directly facing them in the hotel lobby. On my 29th birthday. My heart stopped beating for what felt like forever. Then it started again, hammering so hard I thought everyone in the lobby could hear it. I watched as Brandon leaned down and whispered something in her ear. She giggled and pushed him playfully. The same way I used to. The same way he told me I was the only one who could make him smile like that. 3 hours earlier, Brandon had kissed my forehead and told me he had to leave for an emergency business trip. "I'm so sorry, baby," he'd said, looking genuinely upset. "I know it's your birthday. I'll make it up to you when I get back, I promise." I believed him. Like I'd believed him the last 4 times he'd had these sudden business trips. Like I'd believed him when he said he was working late. Like I'd believed him when he said his phone died and that's why he didn't answer my calls. But something in my gut had been screaming for months. Call it woman's intuition. Call it the way he'd started putting his phone face down. Call it how he'd stopped looking me in the eyes when he said he loved me. So instead of sulking at home like a good wife, I'd followed him. And now I was watching my marriage die in real time. The woman was beautiful. That hurt more than it should have. She was tall, blonde, and everything I wasn't. She wore a red dress that probably cost more than my car payment. Her laugh was musical. When she looked at my husband, her eyes sparkled like he was the most amazing man in the world. The same way I used to look at him. Brandon was dressed in his best suit. The navy one I'd bought him for our anniversary last year. The one he said was too fancy for work. Apparently, it wasn't too fancy for her. They walked toward the hotel restaurant, still holding hands. Still in their own little bubble. Still completely unaware that Brandon's wife was sitting 20 feet away, watching her entire world crumble. I should have been crying. I should have been screaming. I should have been running home to pretend I never saw this. Instead, I felt something else entirely. Something cold and calculating. Something that scared me and thrilled me at the same time. I pulled out my phone and started recording. The video was shaky at first because my hands were trembling. But I steadied myself and got clear footage of them walking together. Of him opening the restaurant door for her. Of the way he put his hand on the small of her back as they walked inside. Then I took pictures. Lots of them. Different angles. Close-ups of their faces. Wide shots showing the hotel name clearly in the background. Pictures of Brandon's license plate in the parking lot, time-stamped and dated. My birthday. October 15th. 7:30 p.m. I sat in that lobby for 2 hours waiting. Other hotel guests came and went. Families checking in for vacations. Business travelers heading to their rooms. Couples going out for romantic dinners. All of them living their normal lives while mine was ending. Finally, they came out of the restaurant. Brandon had his arm around her waist now. They were walking slowly, like neither of them wanted the evening to end. They stopped at the elevator bank and he pressed the up button. My stomach dropped. They weren't going home. They were going upstairs. To a room. Together. The elevator arrived and just before the doors closed, Brandon looked directly at me. Our eyes met for exactly 3 seconds. I watched the color drain from his face. I watched his mouth fall open. I watched him realize that his secret was no longer a secret. I smiled. Not a happy smile. Not a sad smile. A smile that said, "I see you and now you're going to pay." The elevator doors closed. I stood up on shaking legs and walked to the front desk. The clerk was young and friendly, probably used to dealing with all kinds of hotel drama. "Excuse me," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. "My husband just went upstairs with another woman. Could you tell me what room they're in?" The clerk's eyes went wide. "Ma'am, I can't give out room information." "It's okay," I interrupted, showing him my phone. "I already have everything I need." I walked out of that hotel a different person than the one who'd walked in. The woman who'd entered had been a wife who suspected her husband of cheating. The woman who left was a wife who knew her husband was cheating and had proof. More importantly, the woman who left had a plan. Brandon's phone started buzzing in my car. Text after text. Call after call. I didn't answer any of them. Let him panic. Let him wonder what I was going to do. Let him realize that his comfortable life was about to become very uncomfortable. As I drove home, I thought about our wedding day. How happy we'd been. How he'd promised to love, honor, and cherish me. How I'd believed every word. I thought about all the sacrifices I'd made for our marriage. Moving away from my family for his job. Putting my career on hold to support his. Believing him when he said we were a team. I thought about all the lies. All the nights he'd come home late, smelling like someone else's perfume but claiming he'd been working. All the weekends he'd been too tired to spend time with me but apparently had energy for her. By the time I pulled into our driveway, I wasn't sad anymore. I wasn't hurt anymore. I was angry. But it was a cold, focused anger. The kind that didn't make you scream or throw things. The kind that made you plan. Brandon's car wasn't in the driveway yet. That gave me time to pack his bags and put them on the front porch where he could find them, along with printed copies of every photo I'd taken. You wanted to play games? Fine. But he was about to learn that I was much better at playing than he was. Brandon's key rattled in the front door at 11:47 p.m. I know because I was watching the clock, sitting in our living room with all the lights on, waiting for him. He walked in slowly, like he was afraid of what he might find. When he saw me sitting on the couch, his shoulders slumped. "Simone," he started, his voice barely a whisper. "Your bags are on the front porch," I said calmly. "Along with some photos I thought you might want to see." His face went white. "Baby, let me explain." "Don't." I held up my hand. "Don't call me baby. Don't try to explain. Don't insult my intelligence any more than you already have." He took a step toward me, but I stood up and backed away. The hurt in his eyes almost made me feel sorry for him. Almost. "How long?" I asked. "Simone, please." "How long, Brandon?" He closed his eyes. 14 months. 14 months. Over a year. While I was planning our anniversary dinner, he was planning hotel dates with her. While I was buying him Christmas presents, he was buying her jewelry. While I was talking to my sister about maybe starting a family, he was starting a whole different life. "What's her name?" "Nicole." "Does she know about me?" He nodded, unable to look at me. "So you're both liars." I picked up a printed photo from the coffee table and handed it to him. "This is my favorite one. Look how happy you both look." Brandon stared at the photo, his hands shaking. It was the one where they were walking into the restaurant, his hand on her back, both of them smiling like they didn't have a care in the world. "I never meant for this to happen," he said. "But it did happen. For over a year it happened. Every day for over a year you woke up and chose to lie to me. Every day for over a year you came home and kissed me hello while thinking about her. Every day for over a year, you let me believe I was married to a man who loved me." Tears were streaming down his face now. "I do love you." "No, you don't." I said it so matter-of-factly that it surprised both of us. People who love each other don't do this. "You love the idea of me. You love having someone to come home to when she's not available. You love having a wife to play house with while you play boyfriend with her." "That's not true." "Brandon, stop. Just stop lying. You're not good at it anyway. I've known something was wrong for months. The late nights. The business trips. The way you stopped touching me. The way you started hiding your phone. I just didn't want to believe it." I walked to the window and looked out at his suitcases on the porch. I should have trusted my instincts sooner. Where am I supposed to go? I turned back to him. "That's not my problem anymore. You should have thought about that before you decided to cheat on your wife. Can't we try counseling? Can't we work through this?" The laugh that came out of me was bitter and sharp. "Work through this? Brandon, you've been living a double life for over a year. You've been lying to my face every single day. You've been spending our money on another woman. You've been giving her the time and attention and love that belonged to your wife. What exactly is there to work through?" I made a mistake. A mistake is forgetting to take out the trash. A mistake is being late for dinner. Having an affair for 14 months isn't a mistake. It's a choice. A choice you made over and over and over again. He was sobbing now, which should have made me feel something. But I just felt empty. Like all the love I'd had for him had drained out of me in that hotel lobby. "I'll end it with her," he said desperately. "I'll never see her again. We can move away, start fresh." "No. Simone, please." "No, Brandon. I'm done. We're done. This marriage is done." "But we took vows." "You broke those vows the first time you touched her. You broke them the first time you told her you loved her. You broke them the first time you chose her over me." I walked to the front door and opened it. "Your bags are on the porch. Take them and leave. This is my house too." "No, it's not. Check the deed. It's in my name. From my inheritance when my grandmother died. Remember? You said it made more financial sense that way for tax purposes." The color drained from his face again. He'd forgotten about that. I hadn't. "You can't just kick me out. Watch me." I stepped aside and gestured toward the door. "Get your bags and leave, Brandon. Don't make this harder than it already is." He stood there for a long moment, looking around the living room like he was seeing it for the first time. Maybe he was. Maybe he'd been so busy thinking about her that he'd stopped seeing what was right in front of him. Where will I go? Call Nicole. I'm sure she'll take you in. Or maybe you can get a hotel room. You seem to like hotels. He flinched like I'd slapped him. Simone, I know you're hurt. Hurt. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Brandon, hurt is what you feel when someone cancels dinner plans. Hurt is what you feel when someone forgets your birthday. This isn't hurt. This is betrayal. This is finding out that the person you trusted most in the world has been lying to you for over a year. This is realizing that your entire marriage has been a lie. Not all of it was a lie. Yes, it was. Every day for the past 14 months was a lie. Every, I love you, was a lie. Every, how was your day, was a lie. Every time you came home to me after being with her was a lie. I could see him trying to think of something to say, some way to fix this. But there was nothing to fix. You can't repair something that's been completely destroyed. I'll call you tomorrow, he said finally. Don't. We need to talk about the divorce. My lawyer will handle that. You already called a lawyer? I smiled. I called a lawyer 2 hours ago, right after I left the hotel. Her name is Janet Rodriguez, and she specializes in cases involving infidelity. She's very good at her job. Brandon's face went pale. You're not wasting any time. Neither did you. 14 months, remember? He walked toward the door like a man walking to his execution. When he reached the threshold, he turned back one more time. I really did love you, Simone. I still do. No, Brandon. If you loved me, you wouldn't have done this. If you loved me, you would have talked to me if you were unhappy. If you loved me, you would have ended our marriage before starting something with someone else. What you loved was having both of us. What you loved was the thrill of sneaking around. What you loved was thinking you were smart enough to never get caught. I never wanted to hurt you. But you did. Every single day for over a year you hurt me. The difference is now you have to face what you've done. He picked up his suitcases from the porch and loaded them into his car. I watched from the doorway until his taillights disappeared down the street. Then I closed the door, locked it, and put the chain on. For the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe. I walked back to the living room and looked at the photos scattered on the coffee table. Brandon and Nicole, laughing and touching and looking at each other like they were the only two people in the world. Tomorrow, those photos would be evidence in my divorce case. Tonight, they were just reminders of how blind I'd been. But I wasn't blind anymore. And Brandon was about to learn exactly what that meant. The next morning, I woke up to 17 missed calls and 43 text messages from Brandon. I deleted them all without reading them and turned my phone to silent. I had work to do. Janet Rodriguez's office was downtown in a gleaming high-rise that screamed success. She was exactly what I'd expected from her website: sharp, professional, and no nonsense. Her handshake was firm, her smile was confident, and her eyes were kind but fierce. Tell me everything, she said after we'd settled in her office. So I did. I told her about the business trips that weren't business trips. About the late nights and the secret phone calls. About following Brandon to the hotel and catching him red-handed. I showed her the photos and the videos. This is excellent evidence, Janet said, flipping through the printed photos. Very clear, well documented, and the timestamps show a pattern. How long do you suspect the affair has been going on? He said 14 months when I confronted him last night. Janet made a note. And you have no intention of attempting reconciliation? None whatsoever. Good. That makes this easier. She leaned back in her chair. Now let's talk about assets. What do you and your husband own together? I pulled out a folder I'd prepared that morning. The house is in my name only. It was bought with my inheritance. We have 2 cars. Mine is paid off and in my name, his has payments and is in both our names. We have a joint checking account, a joint savings account, and a joint credit card. He has a 401k through his job, and I have one through mine. Any other assets? Investments? Valuable items? He has a collection of vintage watches that he says is worth about $30,000. And there's some jewelry he bought. I paused. Actually, I'm not sure if he bought it for me or for her. Janet nodded grimly. We'll need to go through everything with a fine-tooth comb. In infidelity cases, sometimes the cheating spouse will hide assets or spend marital money on the affair partner. Do you have access to bank statements? Yes. I handle most of our finances. Perfect. I want you to print out every bank statement, every credit card statement, and every receipt you can find for the past 2 years. Look for any charges you don't recognize, especially hotels, restaurants, jewelry stores, or unusual cash withdrawals. I spent the rest of the day at home digging through our financial records. What I found made me sick to my stomach. Hotel charges dating back 15 months. Not 14-15. Brandon had lied about how long the affair had been going on. Restaurant charges for expensive dinners on nights when he told me he was working late. Jewelry store purchases that I'd never received. Charges for a weekend getaway to a mountain resort that I'd never taken. Lingerie purchases from stores I'd never shopped at. Cash withdrawals of $300 every other week like clockwork. By the time I finished going through everything, I'd found over $15,000 in charges related to his affair. $15,000 of our money that he'd spent on another woman. I photographed every receipt, every statement, every suspicious charge. Then I organized them chronologically and made copies of everything. But I wasn't done. Next, I went through Brandon's home office. I'd never snooped before because I'd trusted him. What a mistake that had been. In his desk drawer, under some old insurance papers, I found a burner phone. My hands were shaking as I turned it on. It was filled with text messages between Brandon and Nicole. The messages made me physically ill. They weren't just having an affair, they were planning a future together. Nicole was talking about leaving her husband. Brandon was talking about divorcing me. They had pet names for each other. They sent pictures I couldn't force myself to look at. But the worst part was reading Brandon's messages about me. "She's so clueless," one message said. "I think she actually believes I'm working late. Sometimes I feel bad lying to her," said another. "But then I think about you and it's worth it. She's been talking about having kids," read a message from 3 months ago. "I keep making excuses. I can't have kids with her when I'm planning to leave her for you." I had to run to the bathroom and throw up. When I came back, I photographed every single message, every photo, every call log. Then I put the phone back exactly where I'd found it. Brandon's laptop was password protected, but I knew his passwords. He used the same 3 passwords for everything: our anniversary date, my birthday, and his mother's maiden name. It was our anniversary date. His email was a goldmine. Hotel confirmations, dinner reservations, flight bookings for trips I'd never taken, and emails to Nicole that were even more explicit than the text messages. In one email, Brandon had sent Nicole photos of me without my knowledge. Photos of me sleeping. Photos of me getting ready for work. The subject line said, "What I'm stuck with until I can leave her." I screamed. Actually screamed right there in my own home office. The violation was so complete, so disgusting that I couldn't contain it. But then I took screenshots of everything. Every email. Every reservation. Every hateful message about me. By evening, I had compiled a folder of evidence that was 3 inches thick. Bank statements showing he'd spent our money on her. Photos of them together. Text messages planning their future. Emails talking about leaving me. I called Janet and told her what I'd found. "This is even better than I hoped," she said. "With this level of evidence, especially the financial infidelity and the duration of the affair, you're going to do very well in the divorce proceedings." And Simone. "Yes. I'm sorry you had to see all of that. I know how painful it must have been." "It was," I admitted. "But it also made me realize something." "What's that?" "I'm not just angry anymore. I'm determined. I want him to pay for every lie, every dollar he spent on her, every humiliation he put me through. I want him to regret the day he decided to cheat on me." Janet was quiet for a moment. "Simone, I understand your anger. But remember, the goal here is to protect your interests and get you a fair settlement. Revenge can sometimes work against us in court." "I'm not talking about revenge in court," I said. "I'm talking about making sure he faces the consequences of his choices. In every aspect of his life." "What do you mean?" I looked at the folder of evidence in front of me. "I mean that his affair is about to stop being a secret." The next morning, I sat in a coffee shop across from Brandon's office building, watching him walk to work like nothing had changed. He was on his phone, probably talking to her. He looked stressed, which gave me a small sense of satisfaction. But stress was nothing compared to what was coming. I'd spent the night planning. Not just the divorce that was Janet's job. I was planning something bigger. Something more complete. Brandon thought he could compartmentalize his life. Work in one box, me in another box, Nicole in a third box. He thought he could keep all his boxes separate and clean. He was about to learn that life doesn't work that way. My first stop was Parker Investigations, a private detective agency that Janet had recommended. The owner, Detective Riley Parker, was a former police officer who specialized in infidelity cases. "I need to know everything about Nicole," I told him. "Her full name, where she works, where she lives, whether she's married, what her husband does, what her family situation is. Everything." Riley nodded. "From the photos you've shown me, this shouldn't be difficult." Give me 48 hours. I also need to know if Brandon has any other assets I don't know about. Hidden accounts, investments, anything that should be part of the divorce settlement. That might take a little longer, but we can do it. I paid Riley a retainer and left feeling like I was finally taking control of the situation. Next, I drove to the bank where Brandon and I had our joint accounts. I'd called ahead and made an appointment with the manager. I need to remove my husband's access to our joint accounts, I told her. We're getting divorced and I have evidence that he's been using marital funds inappropriately. The manager, a middle-aged woman named Patricia, looked sympathetic. I'm sorry to hear about your situation. Unfortunately, since these are joint accounts, I can't remove his access without his signature or a court order. What can I do to protect myself? You can open new accounts in your name only and transfer your portion of the funds. You can also close the joint credit card, though you'll both be responsible for any existing balance. I opened a new checking account and transferred half of our savings into it. It felt good to take control of my own money again. That afternoon, Riley called me with preliminary information about Nicole. Her full name is Nicole Camden and she's definitely married, he said. Her husband's name is Robert Camden and he's a doctor. They live in Riverside Heights, that's a pretty expensive neighborhood. She works at Morrison Marketing, which is actually one of your husband's main competitors. My stomach dropped. She works for a competitor? Yeah. She's a senior account manager there. Has been for 3 years. This was even worse than I'd thought. Brandon wasn't just cheating on me, he was potentially sharing confidential business information with a competitor. That was grounds for termination and possibly legal action. There's more, Riley continued. They have 2 kids. Twin boys, age 7. And from what I can tell, her husband has no idea about the affair. 2 kids. Brandon was helping break up a family with 2 children. The thought made me feel sick, but it also gave me another piece of ammunition. I need you to find out everything you can about Robert Camden, I said. Where he works, his contact information, his schedule. Everything. Are you planning to tell him about the affair? Maybe. Doesn't he have a right to know? Riley was quiet for a moment. That's not really my call to make. But I'll get you the information. That evening, I sat in my living room with everything spread out in front of me like a war map. Photos of Brandon and Nicole. Bank statements showing the money he'd stolen from our marriage. Text messages showing their plans. Information about Nicole's family. I felt like a general planning a battle. And in a way I was. Brandon had made choices that affected more than just our marriage. He'd involved Nicole's family. He'd involved our finances. He'd involved his workplace by dating a competitor's employee. He'd made this bigger than just the 2 of us. So my response was going to be bigger than just the 2 of us. My phone buzzed. A text from my sister Amanda. How are you holding up? Do you want me to come visit? I stared at the message for a long time. Amanda was the only family I had left since our parents died in a car accident 3 years ago. She lived across the country, but she'd fly out if I asked her to. But I didn't want comfort right now. I didn't want someone to hold my hand and tell me everything would be okay. I wanted justice. I texted back, I'm okay. Handling some things. I'll call you soon. Another buzz. This time it was Brandon. Please talk to me. We can work this out. I deleted the message without responding. Then I opened my laptop and started typing. If Brandon wanted to play games, I was going to show him how games were really played. The next morning, I drove to Brandon's workplace. Pembroke Consulting was housed in a modern office complex where Brandon had worked for 6 years. I knew his schedule like clockwork. He always got coffee from the lobby cafe at 10 a.m. I positioned myself at a table where I could see the elevators and waited. At exactly 10:02, Brandon stepped off the elevator and walked toward the cafe. He looked terrible. His hair was messy, his suit was wrinkled, and he had dark circles under his eyes. Good. When he spotted me, he froze. I stood up and walked over to him. We need to talk. Simone, what are you doing here? Protecting my interests. I handed him a manila envelope. These are divorce papers. You've been served. His hands shook as he opened the envelope. You're asking for everything. Not everything. Just what I'm entitled to. Plus damages for your infidelity and misuse of marital funds. Damages? I have records of every penny you spent on your affair. $15,000, Brandon. You stole $15,000 from our marriage to spend on another woman. People in the cafe were starting to stare. Brandon's face was red with embarrassment. Can we please discuss this somewhere private? He whispered. No. You gave up the right to privacy when you decided to cheat on me in public. I raised my voice slightly. Did you really think I wouldn't find out about the hotel rooms? The expensive dinners? The jewelry you bought for her? More people were looking now. I recognized some of Brandon's co-workers. Simone, please. Oh, and Brandon? You might want to talk to HR. I think they'd be very interested to know that you've been having an affair with someone who works for Morrison Marketing. Isn't that a competitor? I bet that violates some company policies. The color drained from his face completely. You wouldn't. Watch me. I smiled sweetly. You made this mess, Brandon. Now you get to deal with the consequences. I walked away, leaving him standing there with the divorce papers in his hands and his coworkers staring at him. My next stop was the HR department. I took the elevator to the 5th floor and walked into the human resources office like I belonged there. Hi, I said to the receptionist. I need to speak with someone about a potential policy violation involving one of your employees. 20 minutes later, I was sitting across from HR Director Michelle Torres, showing her printed copies of text messages between Brandon and Nicole. This shows that your employee has been in a romantic relationship with someone from Morrison Marketing for over a year, I explained. Given that Morrison is one of your main competitors, I thought you should be aware of the potential conflict of interest. Michelle studied the messages carefully. Mrs. Thompson, may I ask how you obtained these communications? Brandon is my husband. These were on his personal phone, which he left at home. Not technically true, but not technically false either. And you're sharing this with us because? Because I believe employees should be held accountable for their actions. And because I think you have a right to know if one of your employees is potentially sharing confidential information with a competitor. Michelle nodded slowly. We'll certainly look into this. Thank you for bringing it to our attention. As I left the HR office, I felt a surge of satisfaction. Brandon's comfortable work environment was about to become very uncomfortable. But I wasn't done. That afternoon, I met with a financial advisor. I'd never had my own financial advisor before Brandon, and I had always used his guy. But I was done letting Brandon control any aspect of my life. I'm getting divorced, I told the advisor, a sharp woman named Carol Chen. I need to protect my assets and plan for my financial future. Carol reviewed my financial situation carefully. You're in better shape than most people going through a divorce, she said. The house being in your name only is a huge advantage. And the fact that you have evidence of financial infidelity will help in the settlement. What else should I be doing? First, make sure all your individual accounts are secure. Change passwords, update contact information, make sure he can't access anything. Second, start building your own credit history separate from the joint accounts. Third, consider what you want to do with the house. Keep it, sell it, or use it as leverage in the settlement. I spent the next 2 hours planning my financial independence. It felt empowering to make decisions about my own money for the first time in years. That evening, Riley called with more information about Nicole's husband. Dr. Robert Camden is a pediatric surgeon at Children's Hospital, he said. Very well respected, makes good money. He has no idea his wife is cheating. I watched their house for a few hours today and he seems like a devoted father. Came home right after work, played with the kids in the yard, helped with homework. The image of Nicole's husband playing with his children while she was texting my husband made me feel sick. But it also made me more determined. I need his email address and his work schedule, I said. Simone, are you sure you want to go down this road? Once you tell him, there's no going back. There's already no going back. Nicole made that choice when she decided to have an affair with a married man. Robert deserves to know what his wife is doing. Riley was quiet for a moment. I'll get you the information. But be careful. This kind of thing can get messy fast. After I hung up, I sat in my kitchen and thought about Robert Camden. A pediatric surgeon who saved children's lives every day, then came home to play with his own kids, completely unaware that his wife was destroying their family. He deserved better. Just like I deserved better. Brandon and Nicole had made their choices. Now it was time for them to face the consequences of those choices. All of them. 3 days later, Brandon called me at 7 in the morning. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of me. You got me fired, he said. His voice was flat, defeated. No, Brandon. You got yourself fired. I just made sure your employer knew about your conflict of interest. Simone, I've worked there for 6 years. That job was my career. And our marriage was my life. Funny how you didn't think about that when you were cheating on me. He was quiet for a long moment. What do you want from me? I want you to face the consequences of your actions. I want you to understand that choices have results. I want you to stop thinking you can lie and cheat and manipulate people without anything bad happening to you. I never meant for any of this to happen. Stop saying that. I was surprised by the anger in my own voice. You meant every bit of it. You meant it when you lied to me about working late. You meant it when you spent our money on hotel rooms. You meant it when you told her you were planning to leave me. You meant all of it, Brandon. Stop pretending this just happened to you. What about forgiveness? What about second chances? What about loyalty? What about the vows you made to me? What about respect? I was pacing around my kitchen now. You want forgiveness? You want a second chance? You should have thought about that before you spent over a year lying to my face. I made a mistake. For the last time, this wasn't a mistake. Mistakes are accidents. This was a choice. Hundreds of choices. Every day for 14 months you chose her over me. Every day for 14 months you chose lies over truth. Every day for 14 months, you chose to betray the person who loved you most. I could hear him crying on the other end of the phone. Simone, I lost my job. Nicole's not returning my calls. I have nowhere to go. I'm staying in a motel. Nicole's not returning your calls? That was interesting. Her husband found out about us. Someone sent him photos and text messages. He kicked her out, but she went back to him. She said she can't see me anymore because of her kids. My heart was pounding. Someone had told Robert Camden about the affair. Someone had sent him evidence. But it wasn't me. I hadn't contacted him yet. How did her husband find out? I don't know. Someone sent him everything. Photos, messages, hotel receipts. Everything. I felt a chill run down my spine. There was only one other person who had access to that kind of evidence. Brandon, where did you get the photos and messages that were sent to Robert? What do you mean? Someone had to have copies of your communications with Nicole to send them to her husband. Who else knew about your affair? Brandon was quiet for a long time. I don't know. We were careful. Not careful enough, apparently. After I hung up, I called Riley immediately. Did you contact Robert Camden? I asked. No. I told you I'd wait for your instructions. Someone sent him evidence of the affair. Photos, text messages, hotel receipts. Someone who had access to everything. Riley was quiet for a moment. Simone, there's something I should tell you. When I was investigating Nicole, I found out something interesting. She's not the only one. What do you mean? Your husband has a pattern. Nicole is the third affair I can document in the past 3 years. The world tilted sideways. 3 affairs. I was still gathering information before I told you. But yes, there were 2 others before Nicole. Shorter relationships, but still affairs. 3 affairs. Brandon hadn't just cheated on me once. He'd been serially unfaithful for years. Our entire marriage had been a lie. Who were the others? I'm still tracking down details, but one was a coworker at his old job. The other was someone he met at a conference. Simone, I think someone else knows about this pattern. Someone who's been watching him. Who? I don't know yet. But someone's been documenting his affairs. Someone sent that information to Robert Camden, and it wasn't you or me. After I hung up with Riley, I sat in my living room trying to process this information. Brandon hadn't just cheated on me with Nicole. He'd been cheating on me for years. With multiple women. Our entire marriage had been built on lies. But someone else knew about it. Someone who'd been watching, documenting, collecting evidence. Someone who'd decided to expose Nicole's affair to her husband. Oh, and why now? My phone rang. It was a number I didn't recognize. Hello? Is this Simone Thompson? Yes. This is Dr. Robert Camden. I think we need to talk. Dr. Robert Camden was nothing like I'd expected. He was tall and soft-spoken, with kind eyes that looked exhausted. We met at a coffee shop downtown, both of us looking like survivors of the same disaster. I'm sorry about your situation, he said after we'd sat down. This must be incredibly difficult for you. I'm sorry about yours too. How are your children handling everything? His face crumpled slightly. They don't know yet. Nicole moved back home after I confronted her, and we're trying to figure out how to tell them. He pulled out a manila envelope. I wanted to show you what I received. Inside the envelope were photos of Brandon and Nicole together, printouts of their text messages, and copies of hotel receipts. But these weren't the same evidence I'd collected. These photos were taken from different angles, different times. Someone else had been following them. Do you know who sent this to you? I asked. No. It came from an anonymous email address. But whoever it was, they saved my marriage from continuing to be a lie. We spent an hour comparing notes. Robert had suspected something was wrong for months just like I had. Nicole had been working late, taking mysterious phone calls, being secretive about her phone. The same patterns Brandon had shown. The thing that hurts the most, Robert said, is that I trusted her completely. Even when I had doubts, I pushed them away because I thought she loved me. I know exactly what you mean. Are you planning to try to work things out with your husband? I shook my head. No. Too much has been broken. Too many lies. What about you? We're going to try counseling. For the kids. But honestly, I don't know if I can ever trust her again. As we were leaving, Robert handed me a business card. If you ever need anything, please call me. We're both dealing with the fallout from their choices. That afternoon, I decided it was time to tell our mutual friends what had happened. Brandon and I had a close group of couple friends, people we'd spent holidays with, gone on vacations with, shared important moments with. I started with Beth and Greg Morrison, who'd been our friends for over 10 years. I need to tell you something, I said when Beth answered the phone. Brandon and I are getting divorced. He's been having an affair. The silence on the other end of the phone was deafening. Simone, are you sure? Beth finally asked. I caught him at a hotel with her. I have photos, text messages, everything. Oh my God. I can't believe it. Brandon seems so devoted to you. That's what I thought too. Is there any chance you could work things out? No. This has been going on for over a year. Maybe longer. There's no coming back from this. Beth was quiet for a moment. What can we do to help? Just be my friend. That's all I need right now. Of course. Greg and I are here for you. Always. I made similar calls to our other friends. Each conversation was difficult, but each one also felt like reclaiming my narrative. Brandon had controlled the story of our marriage for so long, making excuses for his absences, creating explanations for his behavior. Now people were hearing the truth. Most of our friends were supportive of me. A few asked if I was sure I didn't want to try counseling. But overall, the response was clear. Brandon had destroyed not just our marriage, but his relationships with our friend group. That evening, I got a call from Brandon's sister, Karen. Simone, Brandon told me what happened. I'm so sorry. Thank you, Karen. I appreciate that. I want you to know that what he did was wrong. Completely wrong. Our whole family is disappointed in him. I'm sorry this affects your family too. Don't apologize. You didn't do anything wrong. Brandon made these choices. She paused. I know this is probably awkward, but I want you to know that you'll always be family to us. Brandon's actions don't change how we feel about you. After I hung up with Karen, I realized that Brandon hadn't just lost his job and his affair partner. He was losing his social connections, his family relationships, and his reputation. The life he built while lying to me was crumbling down around him. And I didn't feel sorry for him at all. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Check your email. I opened my laptop and found a message from an anonymous email address. The subject line said, "You deserve to know everything." Inside was a detailed report about Brandon's affairs. Not just Nicole, but 3 other women over the past 5 years. The report included names, dates, locations, and evidence. Photos, text messages, financial records. Brandon hadn't just cheated on me with Nicole. He'd been serially unfaithful almost our entire marriage. At the bottom of the email was a note. He's done this to other wives too. You deserved better. Make him pay. I stared at the screen, my hands shaking. Someone had been watching Brandon for years. Someone had been documenting his affairs, collecting evidence, waiting for the right moment to expose him. But who? And why were they helping me? I forwarded the email to Janet immediately. This evidence would guarantee that I got everything I was asking for in the divorce. Then I leaned back in my chair and smiled. Brandon thought he was smart. He thought he could compartmentalize his life, keep his secrets, manipulate everyone around him. But someone had been watching. Someone had been waiting. And now all his secrets were coming to light. The game was almost over and I was winning. The divorce hearing was scheduled for a Tuesday morning in November. I arrived at the courthouse early, wearing my best navy suit and carrying a folder thick with evidence. Janet met me at the entrance. Are you ready for this? She asked. I've been ready since the night I caught him. Good. Remember, let me do the talking. Your job is to stay calm and composed no matter what Brandon or his lawyer says. Brandon's lawyer was a middle-aged man named Harold Wells who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. Brandon sat next to him at the defendant's table, avoiding eye contact with me. Judge Patricia Williams reviewed our case file before calling the court to order. She was known for being fair but firm, especially in cases involving infidelity. Mrs. Thompson, the judge said, please tell the court about your marriage and the events leading to this divorce filing. I stood up and spoke clearly. Your Honor, I was married to Brandon Thompson for 5 years. I believed we had a strong, loving marriage until I discovered he was having an affair. On my 29th birthday, I followed him to a hotel where I witnessed him with another woman. And you have evidence of this affair? Yes, Your Honor. Extensive evidence. Janet approached the bench with our folder. Your Honor, we have photographic evidence, text messages, financial records showing misuse of marital funds, and testimony from witnesses. The judge reviewed the evidence for several long minutes. Her expression grew more serious as she flipped through the photos and documents. Mr. Thompson, she said finally, how do you respond to these allegations? Brandon's lawyer whispered something in his ear before Brandon stood up. Your Honor, I made mistakes in my marriage. I take full responsibility for my actions. But I believe the financial claims being made are excessive. Mr. Thompson, according to these records, you spent over $15,000 of marital funds on your extramarital affair. How is claiming reimbursement for stolen money excessive? Brandon's face turned red. I didn't think of it as stealing. What did you think of it as? I don't know, Your Honor. Judge Williams looked back at the evidence. Mrs. Thompson, what are you seeking in this divorce? Janet stood up. Your Honor, Mrs. Thompson is seeking the family home, which is in her name only due to inheritance funds. She's seeking her car, which is paid off and in her name only. She's seeking 50% of all marital assets, plus reimbursement for the $15,000 in marital funds that were spent on the affair, plus damages for emotional distress. And Mr. Thompson, what is your position? Brandon's lawyer stood up. Your Honor, my client is willing to agree to the division of assets, but we feel the additional damages are punitive. Punitive? Judge Williams raised an eyebrow. Mr. Thompson engaged in a 14-month affair, spent marital funds on his affair partner, and violated his marital vows. Mrs. Thompson is entitled to damages for this breach of trust. The hearing continued for another hour, with Janet presenting evidence and Brandon's lawyer trying weakly to minimize the damage. But the outcome was clear from the beginning. Judge Williams ruled in my favor on every point. I was awarded the house, my car, 60% of our shared assets instead of 50%, full reimbursement for the money Brandon spent on his affair, and $10,000 in additional damages for emotional distress. Brandon was responsible for the remaining balance on his car loan and all legal fees for both sides. Mr. Thompson, Judge Williams said in her final remarks, your actions destroyed your marriage and caused significant financial and emotional harm to your wife. This settlement reflects the consequences of those choices. As we left the courthouse, Janet put her hand on my shoulder. That was one of the most clear-cut victories I've seen in 20 years of practice, she said. You should be proud of how you handled this. I don't feel proud, I said. I feel relieved. That's normal. The anger and hurt will fade with time, but you've set yourself up for a good future. That afternoon, I called Riley to thank him for his help with the investigation. The evidence you collected made all the difference, I told him. Actually, Simone, I need to tell you something. Remember that anonymous email you received with the additional evidence about Brandon's other affairs? Yes. I figured out who sent it. My heart started pounding. Who? Nicole's husband. Dr. Robert Camden. Robert? How did he get all that information? After he found out about the affair, he hired his own private investigator. A more experienced one than me, apparently. This guy had been tracking Brandon for months before Nicole's affair was exposed. But why would Robert send me that information? I think he wanted to make sure Brandon faced full consequences for his actions. He was angry that Brandon had helped destroy his family, and he wanted to help you get justice. After I hung up with Riley, I sat in my car outside the courthouse thinking about Robert Camden. A man I barely knew had helped me get justice against the man who'd betrayed us both. That evening, I called Robert to thank him. You didn't have to do that, I said. But I'm grateful you did. Brandon destroyed both of our families, Robert said. The least I could do was make sure he didn't get away with it. How are things with you and Nicole? We're still in counseling. It's hard, but we're trying to work through it for the kids. What about you? How are you doing? Better than I expected. For the first time in months, I feel like I can breathe. That's good. You deserve to be happy, Simone. As I hung up the phone, I realized that Robert was right. I did deserve to be happy. And for the first time since that night in the hotel lobby, I believed I might actually be happy again someday. The legal battle was over. Brandon had lost everything: his job, his friends, his family's respect, and most of his assets. But my real victory wasn't what Brandon had lost. It was what I had gained: my freedom, my self-respect, and my future. 6 months after the divorce was finalized, I stood in the empty storefront that would soon become my own business. The space was small but bright, with large windows facing the street and enough room for the consulting office I'd been dreaming about. Starting my own business had always been a fantasy, something I'd talked about but never had the courage to pursue. But the divorce settlement had given me the financial foundation I needed, and losing Brandon had given me the motivation. "It's perfect," said my contractor, looking at the plans I'd drawn up. "When do you want to start renovations?" "Tomorrow." I decided to open a financial consulting firm specializing in helping women protect their assets and plan for financial independence. After everything I'd learned during my divorce, I realized how many women were in vulnerable positions because they'd let their husbands control their finances. The irony wasn't lost on me that Brandon's betrayal had led me to the career I'd always wanted. My first client was a woman named Patricia whose husband had been spending their retirement savings on gambling. My second was a divorcee who needed help rebuilding her credit after her ex-husband had destroyed it. My third was a young woman who wanted to buy her first house but didn't know where to start. Each client reminded me of myself 6 months ago, smart women who'd lost control of their financial lives and needed help getting it back. The business grew faster than I'd expected. Word spread through networks of women who'd been through similar situations. Within 3 months I had a waiting list. "You're becoming the go-to person for women's financial empowerment," said Amanda during one of our weekly phone calls. My sister had been my biggest cheerleader throughout the divorce and starting the business. "It feels good to help people," I said. "It feels good to turn something awful into something positive." "How are you doing emotionally? Any regrets about not trying to work things out with Brandon?" "None," I said without hesitation. "Every day I wake up grateful that I found out the truth. I can't imagine still being married to someone who was lying to me every single day." "Have you thought about dating again?" "Not yet. I'm still figuring out who I am as a single person. I went straight from college to marriage. I've never actually been an independent adult before." And it was true. For the first time in my life, I was making decisions based solely on what I wanted. I decorated my house the way I liked it. I traveled to places Brandon had never wanted to go. I made friends who were my friends, not couple friends. I was discovering parts of myself that had been buried under years of trying to be the perfect wife. One afternoon, I ran into Beth Morrison at the grocery store. She was one of the couple friends who'd sided with me after the divorce. "Simone, you look amazing," she said, giving me a hug. "How's the business going?" "Really well. Better than I expected. I'm so proud of you for starting over. It takes real courage to rebuild your life like this." "How's everyone else doing?" I asked, meaning our old friend group. "Good. Most of us don't really see Brandon anymore. He's not doing great." "What do you mean?" "He's been struggling to find work. The thing with his old job really hurt his reputation in the industry. And he's living in a studio apartment downtown. Greg saw him at the gas station last week and said he looked terrible." I waited for the satisfaction to hit me, but it didn't come. Instead, I just felt nothing. Brandon's problems weren't my problems anymore. "That's unfortunate," I said, and I meant it. I didn't want Brandon to be happy, but I didn't need him to be miserable either. I just needed him to be irrelevant to my life. "Have you heard anything about Nicole?" Beth asked. "Not really." "Why?" "Robert Camden filed for divorce last month. Apparently, the counseling didn't work out." I felt a pang of sadness for Robert and his children. They'd been innocent victims in all of this. That evening, I was working late at my office when someone knocked on the door. Through the glass, I could see a tall figure in a dark coat. It was Robert Camden. "I'm sorry to bother you so late," he said when I opened the door. "I was driving by and saw your light on." "It's fine. Come in. I heard about your divorce." "I'm sorry." "Thank you. It's been difficult, but it's for the best. Nicole never stopped lying, even in counseling. I finally realized that some things can't be fixed." We sat in my small waiting area, two people who'd been through the same trauma but handled it differently. "I wanted to thank you," Robert said. "For what?" "For showing me that it was possible to move forward. When I first found out about the affair, I thought my only choices were to forgive her or be bitter forever. But watching how you handled your situation showed me there was a third option." "What's that?" "Building something better. You took the worst thing that happened to you and turned it into the foundation for a new life. That gave me the courage to stop trying to save my marriage and start trying to save myself." "How are your boys handling everything?" "Better than I expected. Kids are resilient. And honestly, they're happier now that the tension in the house is gone. Nicole and I are sharing custody, and we're both committed to putting them first." That's good. They're lucky to have you as a father. What about you? Are you happy? I thought about the question seriously. Yeah, I am. For the first time in years, I'm genuinely happy. I wake up excited about my day. I'm proud of what I'm building. I feel like myself again. You should be proud. What you've accomplished is remarkable. After Robert left, I sat in my office looking around at what I'd built. 6 months ago, I'd been a woman whose entire identity was wrapped up in being someone's wife. Now I was a successful business owner, a financial independence advocate, and a woman who'd taken control of her own life. Brandon's betrayal had been the worst thing that ever happened to me. But it had also been the best thing that ever happened to me. It had forced me to discover who I really was when everything I thought I knew about my life was stripped away. And I liked who I was becoming. 2 years after that night in the hotel lobby, I was standing in my expanded office space, watching my team of 3 employees help clients plan their financial futures. What had started as a small consulting practice had grown into a full-service financial planning firm specializing in women's economic empowerment. The Peterson account is signed, said Monica, my newest hire. She wants us to handle her entire divorce settlement investment strategy. Excellent. Make sure she understands all the long-term implications before she makes any decisions. I'd learned that my experience with financial betrayal wasn't unique. Thousands of women discovered every year that their husbands had been hiding money, spending marital assets inappropriately, or leaving them financially vulnerable. My firm had become known as the place where women could get honest advice about protecting themselves. The business had been featured in 3 magazines, and I'd been invited to speak at conferences about financial independence and recovering from financial abuse. More importantly, I'd helped over 200 women take control of their financial lives. That afternoon, I was leaving my office to meet Amanda for lunch when I nearly collided with someone coming out of the coffee shop next door. It was Brandon. He looked terrible. His hair was longer and unwashed, his clothes were rumpled, and he'd lost weight in an unhealthy way. He looked like a man who'd been beaten down by life. Simone, he said, his voice barely a whisper. Brandon. I kept my voice neutral. I heard about your business. Congratulations. Thank you. We stood there awkwardly for a moment. He looked like he wanted to say something else but couldn't find the words. How are you doing? I asked, though I wasn't sure why. Not great, he admitted. I've been working temp jobs. Can't seem to find anything permanent. Turns out having an affair with a competitor's employee and getting fired for it really hurts your reputation. I'm sorry to hear that. Are you? He looked at me with something that might have been hope. Yes, I am. I don't wish suffering on anyone, Brandon. I just wish you'd made different choices. Simone, I know I have no right to ask this, but do you think there's any chance we could try again? I've learned so much about myself. I've been in therapy. I know how badly I messed up. I looked at this man who had once been my husband, who had once been the center of my world. I tried to remember what it felt like to love him, but I couldn't. That woman who'd loved him felt like a completely different person. No, Brandon. There's no chance. But we were good together once. No, we weren't. I was good to you. I was loyal and loving and supportive. But you were lying to me for years. Our entire marriage was built on deception. I could be different now. I don't doubt that you could be. But I don't want you to be different. I don't want you at all. I've built a life I love without you, and I'm not interested in going backward. He looked like I'd slapped him. So that's it? 5 years of marriage mean nothing? Those 5 years taught me what I don't want in a relationship. They taught me what I deserve. They taught me that I'm strong enough to survive betrayal and build something better. What about forgiveness? I have forgiven you, Brandon. Forgiveness doesn't mean taking you back. It means I'm not angry anymore. It means I don't waste time thinking about what you did to me. It means I've moved on. You've really moved on? Completely. He nodded slowly, like he was finally accepting something he'd been fighting for 2 years. Are you seeing someone? I thought about mentioning James, the architect I'd been dating for 3 months. He was kind, honest, and treated me like an equal partner. But Brandon didn't need to know about my personal life. That's not your business anymore. Right. Of course. He looked around at the bustling street, the successful businesses, the life continuing around us. You look happy. I am happy. Good. You deserve to be happy. He paused. I know this probably doesn't matter to you, but I really am sorry. For all of it. I believe you are. But apologies don't undo the damage, Brandon. They just acknowledge it. What happened to Nicole? He asked suddenly. I heard she and Robert got divorced. Beyond that, I don't know and I don't care. She was supposed to be worth it, he said bitterly. Losing you, losing my job, losing everything, it was supposed to be worth it because I loved her. Did you love her? Or did you love the excitement of sneaking around? He was quiet for a long moment. I don't know anymore. I don't know what I was thinking. You were thinking you could have everything. You thought you could keep me as your stable, comfortable wife while having excitement on the side. You thought you were smart enough to never get caught. You're right. I know I'm right. An uncomfortable silence settled between us. I should go, he said finally. Yeah, you should. As he walked away, I realized I felt nothing. No anger, no sadness, no regret. Brandon Thompson was just a stranger who'd once been married to someone I used to be. I walked to my car and drove to lunch with Amanda, who was visiting from out of town. You're glowing, she said when I sat down at the restaurant. What's going on? I just ran into Brandon. Oh no. How was that? Fine, actually. He looked terrible, asked if we could try again, and I realized I don't feel anything about him anymore. Not anger, not hurt, nothing. That's huge, Simone. That means you've really healed. I think I have. For the first time in 2 years, I feel like that chapter of my life is completely closed. And now I focus on the future. The business is thriving, I'm happy, I'm dating someone wonderful, and I wake up every day grateful for my life. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you'd never found out about the affair? I thought about it seriously. I'd probably still be married to him, still believing his lies, still sacrificing pieces of myself to make him happy. I'd never have started the business. I'd never have discovered how strong I really am. So in a weird way, his betrayal was the best thing that ever happened to you? In a weird way, yes. It forced me to save myself. That evening, I sat in my beautiful home, the same house where I'd confronted Brandon 2 years ago, but now redecorated to reflect who I really was. I thought about the woman I'd been then, devastated, humiliated, broken. And I thought about the woman I was now, successful, confident, happy. Brandon's betrayal had destroyed the life I thought I wanted. But it had given me the life I actually needed. As I opened my laptop to review tomorrow's client meetings, I smiled thinking about all the women I'd helped discover their own strength. Each of them reminded me that survival wasn't just about getting through betrayal, it was about using that betrayal as fuel to build something better. Brandon had thought he was taking something from me when he chose to have those affairs. But he'd actually given me the greatest gift possible. The chance to discover who I really was when everything I thought I knew about myself was stripped away. And who I really was turned out to be so much stronger, smarter, and more capable than the woman who'd been trying to be the perfect wife. 2 years later, Brandon was living in a studio apartment, working temp jobs, and paying me alimony from the little money he managed to earn. And I was living the life of my dreams, helping other women do the same. The revenge had been complete. But the real victory was that I no longer needed revenge. I had something much better. A life I'd built entirely on my own terms.